Most people believe genius is about intelligence, high IQ, natural talent, special gifts. That is a lie. Genius is not about thinking faster. Genius is about thinking differently when everyone else is emotional. When others panic, genius pauses. When others react, genius observes. When others quit, genius adapts. Average minds chase easy answers. Genius minds question everything. You don't need a higher IQ. You need a stronger way of thinking. Because genius is not born. Genius is trained. And in this audiobook, you will learn how to train your mind to think like a genius. Slow, clear, strategic. Remember this. Genius thinking is calm thinking. Repeat it again. Genius thinking is calm thinking. Chapter 1. Stop reacting and start thinking. Most people live in reaction mode. Something happens and they react. Someone criticizes them, they react. Something goes wrong, they panic. Someone disagrees, they get emotional. Reaction is automatic. Thinking is deliberate. And that difference separates average minds from genius minds. Most people believe intelligence means knowing more. It doesn't. Intelligence means thinking before reacting. That's the difference. Genius minds do not rush. They pause. They observe. They think. Average minds react first and regret later. Genius minds think first and act with precision. Remember this. Pause first, think second. Say it again. Pause first, think second. That is the beginning of genius thinking. Most mistakes are not caused by lack of intelligence. They are caused by emotional reactions. A single angry response can destroy a relationship. A single impulsive decision can destroy an opportunity. A single emotional moment can erase years of progress. And it happens every day. Not because people are stupid, because people react. You have a choice. You can react automatically, or you can think deliberately. You have a choice. That's the key. When something unexpected happens, your brain wants speed. It wants instant answers. It wants instant reactions. It wants instant action. But speed is dangerous. Fast reactions often come from fear, or anger, or ego, or insecurity. Fast reactions feel powerful, but they are usually wrong. Genius thinking is different. Genius thinking is controlled. Genius thinking is patient. Genius thinking is calm. When everyone else rushes, you slow down. When everyone else reacts, you observe. When everyone else speaks, you think. That's the difference. That's the key. Most people believe reacting quickly shows confidence. It doesn't. It shows lack of control. Real strength is restraint. Real strength is silence. Real strength is patience. Anyone can react. Few people can pause. And that pause changes everything. Because inside that pause, there is clarity. Inside that pause, there is intelligence. Inside that pause, there is control. Remember this. Pause first, think second. Again, pause first, think second. Imagine someone insults you. The average reaction is immediate. Defend yourself, attack back, raise your voice, prove your point. But that reaction solves nothing. It only creates more emotion, more conflict, more chaos. A genius mind does something different. It pauses. It asks, is this worth my energy? Is this important? Will reacting help me? Most of the time, the answer is no.
And when you realize that, you stay calm, you stay silent, you stay in control. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to think first. You don't need their permission to choose your response. You have a choice, always. Reaction is weakness disguised as strength. Thinking is strength disguised as silence. That's the truth. Most people cannot tolerate silence. They rush to fill space with words. They rush to defend themselves. They rush to explain. But genius minds are comfortable with silence. They think before speaking. They observe before deciding. They analyze before acting. Because once you react, you lose control. But when you think, you stay in control. That's the key. Emotions are not the enemy. Uncontrolled emotions are the enemy. Anger is not the problem. Fear is not the problem. Stress is not the problem. The problem is automatic reaction. Automatic reaction is dangerous. It bypasses thinking. It bypasses logic. It bypasses intelligence. It puts emotion in charge. And emotion is unreliable. Emotion changes every minute. Emotion exaggerates problems. Emotion distorts reality. Emotion pushes you into mistakes. That is why genius minds do not trust emotions alone. They verify, they analyze, they think.
Remember this: pause first, think second. The pause can be only a few seconds, but those few seconds change everything. 3 seconds of thinking can prevent 3 years of regret. 5 seconds of thinking can prevent a lifetime mistake. 10 seconds of thinking can change your future. But most people never pause. They react instantly, and then they wonder why life feels chaotic. Reaction creates chaos. Thinking creates order. That's the key. You must train this habit, because reaction is natural. Thinking is trained. Reaction is instinct. Thinking is disciplined. Reaction is easy. Thinking is effort. You must practice the pause. When someone speaks, pause. When something goes wrong, pause. When emotions rise, pause. That pause is power. That pause is intelligence. That pause is control. Say it again. Pause first. Think second. The strongest minds are not the fastest minds. They are the most controlled minds. Control is intelligence. Control is power. Control is genius. Anyone can lose control. Anyone can panic. Anyone can react emotionally. But calm thinking is rare. And rarity creates advantage. If you stay calm while others panic, you win. If you think while others react, you win. If you pause while others rush, you win. That's the key. Right now, your life reflects your thinking habits. If you constantly react, your life feels unstable. If you constantly think, your life becomes structured. Better thinking creates better decisions. Better decisions create better outcomes. That is how genius works. Not magic, not talent, not luck. Thinking, deliberate thinking, controlled thinking, disciplined thinking. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Reaction or thinking, impulse or control, emotion or clarity. You have a choice. From this moment forward, practice one rule, just one rule, simple rule, powerful rule. Pause first, think second. Before you respond, pause. Before you decide, pause. Before you speak, pause. Before you act, pause. That pause separates you from the crowd. That pause builds intelligence. That pause builds discipline. That pause builds genius. But pausing is only the beginning. Thinking requires more than control. Thinking requires questioning. Because if you never question your thoughts, you will believe everything your mind tells you. And most people do exactly that. They believe their first thought. They believe their first emotion. They believe their first reaction. That is why they stay average. Because genius minds do something different. They question everything. And that is where we go next.
Takeaway: if you want to think like a genius, you must stop reacting automatically. You must slow down your responses. You must control your emotions. Remember the rule: pause first, think second. Master this, and your mind begins to change. Because in the next chapter, you will learn the next step of genius thinking: question everything you believe.
Chapter 2. Question everything you believe. Most people never question their thinking. They accept ideas without examination. They believe opinions without evidence. They follow advice without reflection. And then they wonder why their lives never change. Because average thinking begins with unquestioned beliefs. Genius thinking begins with questions. Genius minds do not automatically believe what they hear. They investigate, they challenge, they analyze. They ask one powerful question: is this really true? That question changes everything. Because most of what people believe is borrowed. Borrowed from parents, borrowed from teachers, borrowed from friends, borrowed from society. Very little of it is examined. Very little of it is tested. Very little of it is true. You have a choice. You can believe automatically, or you can think independently. You have a choice. That's the key. From childhood, you were trained to accept information. A teacher speaks, you accept. A parent speaks, you accept. An authority speaks, you accept. Nobody teaches you to question. Nobody teaches you to doubt. Nobody teaches you to examine ideas. But genius minds develop a different habit. They ask, how do I know this is true? Where is the evidence? What if the opposite is true? These questions sharpen the mind. These questions create clarity. These questions create intelligence. Because intelligence is not knowing answers. Intelligence is asking better questions. That's the key. Most limitations in your life are not real. They are beliefs. You believe you are not smart enough. You believe you started too late. You believe success is for others. You believe change is difficult. But beliefs are not facts. Beliefs are stories. Stories repeated so many times that they feel real. And the most dangerous beliefs are the ones you never question. You have a choice. You can accept your limitations, or you can question them. You have a choice. Someone once told you that you were not talented. Maybe a teacher, maybe a parent, maybe a friend, maybe your own mind. And you believed it. You carried that belief for years, maybe for decades. But here's the truth. That belief may be completely wrong. One opinion is not reality. One failure is not destiny. One moment does not define your future. But if you never question the belief, it becomes your prison. That's why questioning matters. That's why thinking matters. That's the key. Genius thinkers assume they might be wrong. Average thinkers assume they are right. That difference creates growth. If you believe you are always right, you stop learning. If you believe your ideas are perfect, you stop improving. If you believe your thinking is flawless, you stay stuck. But when you question your thinking, you improve your thinking. And improved thinking improves your life. Remember this. Think deeper than the surface. Again, think deeper than the surface. Most people think questioning creates confusion. It doesn't. Questioning creates clarity. Blind belief creates confusion. Because when you believe everything, you cannot separate truth from illusion. You cannot separate facts from opinions. You cannot separate useful ideas from useless ones. But when you question, you filter, you refine, you strengthen your thinking. That's the key. Questioning does not mean negativity. It does not mean doubting everything forever. It means thinking carefully before believing. It means testing ideas before accepting them. It means examining assumptions before trusting them. Genius thinkers are not cynical. They are careful. They are deliberate. They are precise. They don't reject ideas automatically. They examine them. That's the difference. Look at your daily thoughts.
Many of them are automatic. I can't do this. This is too hard. I'm not ready. This won't work. These thoughts appear without invitation, and most people believe them instantly. But genius thinkers do something different. They challenge the thought. They ask, is this actually true? What evidence supports this? What evidence contradicts this? Is this a fact or just a feeling? And suddenly the thought loses power. Because thoughts are not commands, thoughts are suggestions. You don't need their permission to reject bad thoughts. You don't need their permission to think differently. You have a choice, always. Most fears collapse under questioning. Fear says you will fail. Question it. How do I know? Fear says you are not good enough. Question it. Compared to who? Fear says you will embarrass yourself. Question it. And then what? Fear sounds powerful until you examine it. That's the key. The world rewards people who think independently. Innovation requires questioning. Discovery requires questioning. Progress requires questioning. Nothing new is created by blind acceptance. Everything new begins with doubt. Someone questioned old ideas. Someone challenged tradition. Someone refused to accept the way things are. That is genius thinking, and it begins with small questions, simple questions, daily questions.
Remember this. Think deeper than the surface. Most people stop thinking after the first answer. Genius thinkers keep going. They ask, why? Then they ask again, why? And again, why? Each layer reveals deeper understanding. Each question removes illusion. Each question sharpens intelligence. Surface answers are rarely true answers. Deep answers require effort. Deep answers require patience. Deep answers require discipline. That's the key. You must develop the habit of mental resistance. Not resistance to truth, resistance to automatic belief. When you hear advice, pause and think. When you read information, pause and think. When you feel strong emotion, pause and think. Because emotion often disguises false ideas. Confidence does not equal truth. Popularity does not equal truth. Tradition does not equal truth. Only examination reveals truth. That's the key. Right now, many of your beliefs are shaping your future. Some beliefs help you. Some beliefs limit you. Your job is to identify the difference. Ask yourself, what beliefs are holding me back? What beliefs are helping me grow? What beliefs need to be replaced? Because changing beliefs changes identity, and changing identity changes destiny. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Start with one belief, just one. Choose a belief you have always accepted. Then question it, examine it, test it, challenge it. You may discover it is wrong. And when one false belief disappears, your thinking expands, your confidence grows, your possibilities increase. That is how genius thinking develops, one question at a time. But questioning alone is not enough, because once you question ideas, you must learn how to think clearly about them, and clear thinking requires patience. Clear thinking requires control. Clear thinking requires slowing down. Most people think fast and shallow. Genius thinkers think slow and deep, and that is where we go next. Takeaway. If you want to think like a genius, you must question your beliefs. You must challenge your thoughts. You must examine your assumptions. Remember the rule, think deeper than the surface. Because in the next chapter, you will learn one of the most powerful principles of genius thinking. Slow thinking beats fast thinking. Chapter 3. Slow thinking beats fast thinking. Most people are in a hurry. They hurry to answer. They hurry to decide. They hurry to react. They hurry to judge, and then they make mistakes. Not because they are incapable, because they are too fast. Fast thinking feels efficient. Fast thinking feels smart. Fast thinking feels confident. But fast thinking is often shallow thinking, and shallow thinking produces shallow results. Genius minds understand a simple truth. Speed is not intelligence. Careful thinking is intelligence. That's the key. The world pushes you to move faster, faster decisions, faster results, faster responses, faster success. Everything around you says, hurry. But genius thinking says, slow down. Because rushing destroys clarity. Rushing creates errors. Rushing creates regret. You've seen this in your own life. A rushed decision you later regretted. A rushed response you wished you could take back. A rushed judgment that turned out wrong. It happens because speed reduces awareness. Speed reduces observation. Speed reduces intelligence. You have a choice. You can rush like everyone else, or you can slow down and think clearly. You have a choice. That's the key. Fast thinking is emotional thinking. Slow thinking is logical thinking. When you think fast, your brain uses shortcuts, assumptions, guesses, habits. These shortcuts save time, but they reduce accuracy. Slow thinking is different. Slow thinking examines details. Slow thinking checks assumptions. Slow thinking verifies conclusions. Slow thinking produces better decisions. Remember this. Slow is smart. Say it again. Slow is smart. Most people confuse speed with competence. Someone answers quickly, they seem confident. Someone reacts instantly, they seem decisive. Someone speaks fast, they seem intelligent. But appearance is not reality. Fast answers are often incomplete answers. Fast decisions are often weak decisions. Fast reactions are often emotional reactions. Real intelligence is patient. Real intelligence is deliberate. Real intelligence takes time. That's the key. Genius thinkers are comfortable taking time. They do not panic when answers are unclear. They do not rush to appear smart. They do not rush to prove themselves. They are willing to say, I need to think about this. That sentence shows strength. That sentence shows discipline. That sentence shows intelligence. You don't need their permission to think slowly. You don't need their permission to take your time. You have a choice, always. Slow thinking protects you from mistakes. When you slow down, you notice details. When you slow down, you see patterns. When you slow down, you catch errors. But when you rush, you miss things, important things, critical things. And small mistakes create big problems. One careless decision can create years of difficulty. One rushed judgment can destroy an opportunity. One rushed reaction can damage a relationship. That is why slow thinking is powerful. 3 extra minutes of thinking can save 3 years of regret. That's the key. Slow thinking also improves understanding. Most people listen only long enough to respond. They do not listen to understand. They wait for their turn to speak. That is fast thinking. Genius thinkers listen longer. They observe carefully. They absorb information. They consider different angles. They think before responding. And because they understand more, they decide better. Remember this, slow is smart. Again, slow is smart. Slowing down does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean avoiding decisions. It does not mean hesitation forever. It means deliberate action. It means thoughtful action. It means controlled action. Genius thinkers move slowly in thought and decisively in action.
First they think, then they act with precision. Average minds do the opposite. First they act, then they think. That order creates problems. Thinking must come first. Action must come second. That's the key. Many people fear slow thinking. They think slowing down means falling behind. They think fast people will win. But real success is not a race. Real success is accuracy. The person who makes better decisions wins, not the person who makes faster decisions. Better decisions come from better thinking. Better thinking requires time. You have a choice. You can chase speed, or you can build accuracy. You have a choice. Slow thinking builds confidence because confidence grows from certainty, and certainty grows from understanding. When you rush decisions, doubt follows. You wonder if you made a mistake. You question your judgment. You second-guess yourself. But when you think carefully, you feel steady. You feel clear. You feel sure. That is real confidence. That is the confidence of a genius mind. That's the key. Training slow thinking is simple, but not easy. It requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires effort. Start with small moments. When someone asks a question, pause before answering. When facing a decision, give yourself time. When emotions rise, slow down your breathing. When pressure increases, slow down your thinking. That pause creates space. That space creates clarity. That clarity creates intelligence. Remember the rule, slow is smart. Most people live in mental noise, constant information, constant messages, constant opinions, constant distractions. Noise creates speed. Silence creates thought. That is why genius thinkers value quiet. Quiet allows reflection. Quiet allows analysis. Quiet allows understanding. Without quiet, there is no deep thinking. And without deep thinking, there is no genius thinking. That's the key. You must become comfortable with unanswered questions. You must become comfortable with uncertainty. You must become comfortable with thinking slowly. Because clear answers take time. Strong decisions take time. Accurate thinking takes time. Impatience destroys intelligence. Patience builds intelligence. You have a choice, always. Right now, your thinking speed is a habit. You rush because you are used to rushing. You react quickly because you are trained to react. But habits can change. Thinking habits can improve. Speed can become control. Impulse can become discipline. Reaction can become intelligence. And it begins with one decision. Slow down. Just slow down. But slowing down is only part of genius thinking, because even slow thinking can become confused if emotions take control. A slow mind that panics is still ineffective. A slow mind that fears is still limited. Genius thinking requires something deeper. It requires emotional stability. It requires calm under pressure, because the greatest test of intelligence is not comfort. The greatest test of intelligence is chaos. And that is where we go next.
Takeaway. If you want to think like a genius, you must reject rushed thinking. You must slow your decisions. You must give your mind time to analyze. Remember the rule, slow is smart. Because in the next chapter, you will learn one of the most powerful abilities of a genius mind. Learn to stay calm under pressure. Chapter 4. Learn to stay calm under pressure. Pressure reveals the truth about your mind. Anyone can think clearly when life is easy. Anyone can stay confident when nothing goes wrong. Anyone can appear intelligent when there is no stress. But pressure changes everything. Pressure exposes weakness. Pressure exposes fear. Pressure exposes habits. And most people collapse under pressure.
Not because they lack intelligence, because they lose control. The moment pressure rises, thinking disappears. Emotion takes over. Fear takes over. Panic takes over. And panic destroys intelligence. That's the truth. The real test of a genius mind is not knowledge. The real test is calmness under pressure. Remember this: calm creates clarity. Say it again. Calm creates clarity. That is the foundation of genius thinking. When pressure appears, the body reacts instantly. Your heart beats faster, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tighten, your thoughts race. This reaction is natural. It is survival instinct. But survival instinct is not always useful in modern life. You are not being chased by danger. You are facing problems, decisions, challenges, conflicts. And problems require thinking. But panic blocks thinking. That's the key. Think about the last time you felt pressure. Maybe it was an argument. Maybe it was a deadline. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was uncertainty. In that moment, your thoughts became chaotic. You wanted fast solutions, fast answers, fast escape. But fast thinking under pressure leads to poor decisions. Genius thinkers do something different. They slow down internally. Even when the situation is urgent, they stay steady. Even when others panic, they stay focused. Even when pressure rises, they remain calm because they understand something powerful. Calmness is a skill, and skills can be trained. You have a choice. You can panic automatically, or you can train calmness deliberately. You have a choice. That's the key. Most people believe calmness is personality. They think some people are naturally calm. They think others are naturally emotional. That belief is wrong. Calmness is practice. Calmness is discipline. Calmness is repetition. Every time you choose calm over panic, you strengthen your mind. Every time you stay steady under stress, you build intelligence. Because a calm mind sees clearly. A calm mind analyzes accurately. A calm mind decides wisely. Remember this: calm creates clarity. Again, calm creates clarity. Pressure creates urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. Mistakes create regret. That cycle repeats again and again unless you break it. And you break it with one simple action: slow down your reaction. Slow down your breathing. Slow down your thinking. Because the body influences the mind. Fast breathing creates panic. Slow breathing creates control. When pressure rises, breathe slowly. Deep breath in, slow breath out. Again, slow breath in, slow breath out. Simple, powerful, effective. That is control. That is intelligence. That's the key. Most people lose control because they try to control the situation. They want instant solutions. They want immediate certainty. They want guaranteed outcomes. But pressure situations rarely provide certainty, and fighting uncertainty creates stress. Genius thinkers accept uncertainty. They focus on what they can control: their thinking, their actions, their responses, not the situation. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their permission to control your mind. You don't need their permission to think clearly. You have a choice. Always. When pressure increases, emotions become louder.
Fear says, "This is a disaster." Anger says, "This is unfair." Doubt says, "You will fail." But emotions exaggerate. Emotions distort. Emotions confuse. And genius thinkers understand this. They do not believe every emotion. They observe emotions. They recognize emotions, but they do not surrender to emotions. Emotion is information, not instruction. That's the key.
The strongest advantage you can build is emotional stability, because emotional stability creates consistency, and consistency creates results. If you stay calm only sometimes, your results will be unstable. But if you stay calm consistently, your thinking becomes reliable. Reliable thinking produces reliable success. That is the power of calmness. Watch people under pressure. Most become reactive. They talk faster, they move faster, they think less, they make sudden decisions, they try to escape discomfort. But discomfort is not danger. Pressure is not destruction. Stress is not the end. Pressure is just a test of your thinking, a test of your discipline, a test of your control. And every test makes you stronger if you stay calm. That's the key. Calmness gives you an unfair advantage because most people lose control. They panic, they complain, they blame, they overreact. While they lose clarity, you gain clarity. While they lose focus, you gain focus. While they lose control, you gain control. That is the advantage of genius thinking. You must train calmness daily, not only in big moments, in small moments. When traffic delays you, stay calm. When plans change, stay calm. When someone disagrees, stay calm. When something breaks, stay calm. Small moments build strong minds. Small victories build discipline. Small acts of control build genius thinking. Remember this: calm creates clarity. Most people try to remove pressure from their lives. They avoid difficulty. They avoid responsibility. They avoid risk. But avoidance creates weakness. Pressure creates strength. Challenge builds intelligence. Difficulty sharpens thinking. You become stronger by facing pressure calmly, not by escaping it. That's the key. Right now, your ability to stay calm determines your future, because your biggest opportunities will involve pressure. Leadership requires pressure. Growth requires pressure. Change requires pressure. If pressure controls you, your growth stops. If you control pressure, your growth accelerates. You have a choice, always. From now on, make this your rule. When pressure rises, slow down. When stress increases, breathe. When emotions rise, observe. When chaos appears, stay steady. Because calmness is power. Calmness is intelligence. Calmness is genius. But calm thinking requires structure, because even calm minds can become confused without a clear way to analyze problems. Genius thinkers do not rely on random thinking. They use structured thinking. They simplify complexity. They break problems into fundamentals. They focus on what truly matters. And that is where we go next. Takeaway: if you want to think like a genius, you must stay calm under pressure. You must control your emotions. You must slow your reactions. Remember the rule: calm creates clarity. Because in the next chapter, you will learn one of the most powerful methods of genius thinking: focus on first principles.
Chapter 5. Focus on first principles. Most people think in borrowed ideas. They repeat what they hear. They copy what others do. They follow what seems popular. And they call it thinking. But copying is not thinking. Repeating is not thinking. Following is not thinking. Real thinking begins when you return to the basics. Genius thinkers use a powerful method. They strip problems down to their foundations. They remove assumptions. They remove traditions. They remove opinions. They ask one powerful question: what is actually true? Not what people say is true, not what society believes is true, not what has always been done,
but what is fundamentally true. That is first principles thinking, and it changes everything. Remember this. Return to the basics. Say it again. Return to the basics. That is the foundation of clear thinking. Most people solve problems by imitation. They see what others are doing, then they copy it. This feels safe. This feels logical. This feels efficient. But copying limits intelligence, because if the original idea is wrong, the copy will also be wrong. And many popular ideas are wrong. That's the truth. Genius thinkers do something different. They start from zero. They rebuild understanding from the ground up. They do not ask, what do people usually do? They ask, what actually works? That's the key. Imagine someone wants to improve their life. The average person searches for quick advice, shortcuts, easy methods, simple tricks. But genius thinkers look deeper. They ask, what creates improvement? What causes failure? What habits produce results? They search for fundamentals, because fundamentals create power. Surface knowledge creates confusion. That's the difference. Most confusion exists because people think in complicated ways. They add layers of information. They add unnecessary details. They add opinions and noise. Soon the problem becomes overwhelming. Genius thinkers simplify. They break big problems into small parts. They identify core elements. They remove distractions. They focus on essentials. Because simplicity creates clarity. Complexity creates confusion. Remember this. Return to the basics. When something feels complicated, it usually means you don't understand it yet. True understanding creates simplicity. If you truly understand a problem, you can explain it simply. If you cannot explain it simply, you do not understand it deeply. That is the test. Genius thinkers aim for deep understanding, not surface knowledge, because deep understanding allows better decisions. That's the key. First principles thinking requires effort. It requires patience. It requires discipline. Because the easy path is imitation. The easy path is acceptance. The easy path is following the crowd. But the easy path creates average results. Genius thinking requires deeper effort. You have a choice. You can accept ready-made answers, or you can build real understanding. You have a choice, always. Most limits disappear when you think from first principles. People say, this is impossible. But genius thinkers ask, why is it impossible? Often the answer is weak. Often the answer is assumption. Often the answer is tradition. And when assumptions collapse, new possibilities appear. That is how breakthroughs happen. Someone questions the limits. Someone examines the fundamentals. Someone rebuilds the idea. That is genius thinking. First principles remove fear. Fear grows in uncertainty. Fear grows in confusion. Fear grows in complexity. But when you understand the fundamentals, fear decreases. Because clarity creates confidence. Understanding creates stability. Knowledge creates control. That's the key. Most people try to solve problems emotionally. They worry, they complain, they panic. But emotion does not solve problems. Understanding solves problems. First principles thinking creates understanding. You break the problem apart. You examine each piece. You identify causes. You identify solutions, step by step, piece by piece, slow and deliberate. That is genius thinking. You don't need their permission to think differently. You don't need their permission to question methods. You don't need their permission to start from zero. You have a choice, always. If a method doesn't work, analyze it. If a system fails, examine it. If results are poor, break the problem down.
Ask, what is missing? What is unnecessary? What is essential? That is first principles thinking. Most successful people think this way without realizing it. They simplify, they analyze, they rebuild, they focus on what matters most. That focus creates progress, because energy goes where attention goes. And genius thinkers direct attention to fundamentals, not distractions. That's the key. Right now, your biggest problems probably feel complicated. Maybe your career feels complicated. Maybe your goals feel complicated. Maybe your habits feel complicated. But underneath complexity, there is simplicity. There are core actions, core decisions, core habits. Find those, and everything becomes clearer. Remember this: return to the basics. First principles thinking also protects you from manipulation. People try to influence your thinking. Advertisements, opinions, trends, social pressure, authority figures. They present conclusions. But genius thinkers ask, what are the facts? What are the fundamentals? What is the real evidence? And manipulation loses power, because clarity defeats confusion. That's the key. Training this skill begins with simple problems. When facing a decision, break it down. List the facts. Ignore opinions. Ignore assumptions. Focus on reality. Ask, what do I know for certain? What is uncertain? What matters most? Simple questions, powerful results. But fundamentals alone are not enough, because genius thinking also requires awareness. You must learn to observe carefully. You must learn to notice details. You must learn to see patterns. Patterns reveal hidden truths. Patterns reveal hidden opportunities. Patterns reveal hidden mistakes. And that is where we go next. Takeaway. If you want to think like a genius, you must focus on fundamentals. You must simplify problems. You must remove assumptions. Remember the rule: return to the basics. Because in the next chapter, you will learn another powerful ability of genius thinking. Train your mind to see patterns. Chapter 6. Train your mind to see patterns. Most people see events. Genius thinkers see patterns. Most people see one moment at a time, one mistake at a time, one success at a time, one problem at a time. But genius minds look deeper. They connect the dots. They notice repetition. They detect hidden structure. Because nothing in life happens only once. Success leaves patterns. Failure leaves patterns. Habits create patterns. Decisions create patterns. Your life itself is a pattern. And if you learn to see patterns, you learn to understand reality. Remember this: look again. Say it again: look again. Because the first look rarely shows the truth. That's the key. Most people react to individual events. Something goes wrong, they panic. Something goes right, they celebrate. But they never ask, has this happened before? Genius thinkers always ask that question, because patterns repeat. Mistakes repeat. Opportunities repeat. Behaviors repeat. And if something repeats, it can be understood. If it can be understood, it can be controlled. That's the power of pattern thinking. Think about failure. Most people treat failure as a single event. One mistake, one bad decision, one unlucky moment. But failure is rarely random. Failure is usually a pattern. Poor preparation, poor thinking, poor habits, repeated again and again until results become predictable. Genius thinkers do not ignore patterns. They analyze them. They ask, what keeps happening? What keeps going wrong? What repeats? Because repeated problems have repeated causes, and repeated causes have solutions. That's the key. Success also follows patterns. Consistent effort, clear thinking, good habits, strong discipline, repeated again and again. Success is rarely sudden. Success is usually predictable, because success leaves clues, and genius thinkers search for those clues. They study successful people.
They study successful habits. They study successful systems. Not to copy blindly, but to understand patterns. Remember this. Look again. Most people stop observing too soon. They see once and assume they understand. But the first observation is incomplete. Surface details hide deeper truth. Genius thinkers observe repeatedly. They look twice. They look 3 times. They look until patterns appear, because patterns require time to see. Quick observation creates shallow understanding. Repeated observation creates deep understanding. That's the difference. Right now, patterns exist in your life. Patterns in your thinking, patterns in your habits, patterns in your decisions, patterns in your results. Some patterns help you. Some patterns hurt you. Your job is to identify them. You have a choice. You can ignore your patterns, or you can study them. You have a choice, always. Look at your daily habits. What repeats? Do you delay important work? Do you lose focus easily? Do you quit when things get difficult? Patterns reveal the truth about behavior, and behavior determines outcomes. If negative patterns continue, negative results continue. If positive patterns grow, positive results grow. That's the key. Pattern thinking also improves decision-making because patterns allow prediction. If something happened before, it will likely happen again. If a decision worked before, it may work again. If a strategy failed before, it may fail again. Patterns reduce uncertainty. Patterns reduce confusion. Patterns increase accuracy. And accuracy creates advantage. That is genius thinking. Many people miss patterns because they are distracted. Constant noise, constant information, constant entertainment. Their attention jumps from one thing to another, and pattern recognition requires attention. It requires focus. It requires patience. Without attention, patterns remain invisible. That's the key. Genius thinkers pay attention to details, small details, repeated details, hidden details, because small details reveal big truths. A small habit repeated daily becomes a major result. A small mistake repeated regularly becomes a serious problem. A small improvement repeated consistently becomes transformation. Patterns grow from small actions. That is why details matter.
Remember this. Look again. Observation is a skill, and skills improve with practice. Start simple. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what repeated today? What went well again? What went wrong again? What habits appeared again? Simple questions, powerful awareness, and awareness creates intelligence. That's the key. Pattern thinking also protects you from surprises. Most surprises are not truly unexpected. The signs were there, the clues existed, the warnings appeared. But people ignored them. They failed to see the pattern, and when the result arrived, they called it unexpected. Genius thinkers rarely say, "I didn't see this coming," because they watch carefully, they analyze regularly, they notice repetition, and patterns reveal the future. Patterns exist everywhere, in business, in relationships, in learning, in success, in failure, even in your emotions. Notice when stress appears. Notice when motivation disappears. Notice when focus improves. Emotional patterns reveal mental habits, and mental habits determine performance. That's the key. You don't need their permission to observe carefully. You don't need their permission to analyze your life. You don't need their permission to improve your awareness. You have a choice, always. Choose awareness. Choose observation. Choose understanding. Pattern thinking transforms your mind. You stop seeing chaos. You start seeing structure. You stop seeing randomness. You start seeing causes. You stop guessing. You start understanding. And understanding creates confidence.
because clarity removes uncertainty. That is genius thinking. But patterns alone are not enough, because you must also develop the courage to think differently. Most people see patterns and still follow the crowd. Genius thinkers see patterns and choose their own path. And that is where we go next. Takeaway. If you want to think like a genius, you must train your mind to see patterns. You must observe repeatedly. You must study your habits and results. Remember the rule, look again. Because in the next chapter, you will learn another powerful rule of genius thinking. Think independently.
Chapter 7. Think independently. Most people do not think. They follow. They follow opinions. They follow trends. They follow popular ideas. They follow the crowd. And they call it thinking. But following is not thinking. Agreement is not thinking. Imitation is not thinking. Real thinking begins when you stop relying on the crowd. Genius thinkers stand apart, not because they want attention, but because they want truth. They think for themselves. Remember this. Think for yourself. Say it again. Think for yourself. That is the mark of a genius mind. From an early age, you were trained to fit in. Agree with others. Avoid disagreement. Follow instructions. Stay inside the system. This training creates safety, but it also creates dependency. You begin to trust others more than your own judgment. You begin to doubt your own ideas. You begin to wait for approval, and approval becomes a prison. You have a choice. You can depend on others to think for you, or you can build your own judgment. You have a choice. That's the key. Independent thinking requires courage, because the crowd offers comfort. The crowd offers validation. The crowd offers safety. When you agree with everyone, nobody criticizes you. Nobody challenges you. Nobody questions you. But safety does not create genius. Comfort does not create growth. Agreement does not create insight. Genius thinking often feels uncomfortable because truth is not always popular. That's the reality. Many people ignore their own thinking. They feel an idea forming. They feel doubt about a popular opinion. They sense something is wrong, but they stay silent. They follow anyway because they fear standing alone. But genius thinkers trust their reasoning. They examine evidence. They analyze facts. They question assumptions. And when necessary, they stand alone. You don't need their permission to think differently. You don't need their permission to disagree. You don't need their permission to choose your own path. You have a choice, always. Independent thinking does not mean rejecting everything. It does not mean being stubborn. It does not mean ignoring advice. It means evaluating ideas carefully. It means deciding deliberately. It means choosing consciously. Genius thinkers listen to others, but they do not surrender their judgment. They consider opinions, but they verify evidence. They learn from others, but they think independently. That's the difference. That's the key. The crowd is often wrong. Not always, but often, because crowds react emotionally. Crowds follow trends. Crowds chase excitement. Crowds avoid discomfort. Crowds move quickly. But truth requires patience. Truth requires analysis. Truth requires discipline. That is why genius thinkers step back from the crowd. They observe from a distance. They think before joining. Remember this. Think for yourself. Independent thinking protects you from manipulation. People constantly try to influence you. Advertisements promise easy success. Social media shows perfect lives. Opinions appear as facts. Confidence appears as truth. But independent thinkers question everything. They ask, what is the evidence? What is the motive? What is missing? Because persuasion often hides intention, and intention often hides truth. Independent thinking creates protection. That's the key. Many people wait for permission. Permission to start, permission to change, permission to succeed, permission to improve. But permission rarely comes, and waiting wastes time. You don't need their permission to improve your life. You don't need their permission to learn new skills. You don't need their permission to think clearly. You have a choice, always. Independent thinking creates confidence. Not loud confidence, not emotional confidence, quiet confidence. Confidence built on understanding. Confidence built on reasoning. Confidence built on evidence. When you think for yourself, you trust yourself. And self-trust creates strength. Because you stop depending on approval. You stop fearing disagreement. You stop chasing validation. You become steady. That is genius thinking. Most people change opinions based on pressure. They agree with whoever speaks the loudest. They follow whoever seems confident. They accept whatever feels popular. But genius thinkers change opinions based on evidence. They update beliefs when facts change. They adjust thinking when new information appears. They remain flexible. Because independent thinking is not rigid thinking. It is intelligent thinking. That's the key. Thinking independently also requires responsibility. Because when you choose your own path, you own the results. No excuses, no blaming, no hiding behind others. Your decisions become your responsibility. And responsibility creates growth. Because responsibility forces learning. Responsibility forces improvement. Responsibility forces discipline. You have a choice. Avoid responsibility or build strength. You have a choice. Right now, many of your decisions may be influenced by others, friends, family, society, expectations, traditions. Some influence is helpful. Some influence is limiting. Your job is to recognize the difference. Ask yourself, is this what I truly think, or is this what I was told to think? Simple question, powerful clarity. That's the key. Independent thinking creates freedom. Freedom from pressure, freedom from expectation, freedom from approval, freedom from fear of judgment. And freedom allows growth. Because when your mind is free, your thinking expands, your ideas improve, your confidence grows. That is the power of independent thinking. Remember this, think for yourself. But independent thinking also requires resilience, because your ideas will sometimes fail, your decisions will sometimes be wrong, your judgment will sometimes need correction. Failure is part of thinking. Mistakes are part of growth, and genius thinkers understand this. They do not fear mistakes. They learn from them. They improve because of them. And that is where we go next. Takeaway. If you want to think like a genius, you must think independently. You must trust your reasoning. You must stop blindly following the crowd. Remember the rule. Think for yourself. Because in the next chapter, you will learn another essential rule of genius thinking. Turn failure into information. Chapter 8. Turn failure into information. Most people fear failure. They avoid it. They hide from it. They deny it. They regret it. And because they fear failure, they stop growing. Failure becomes a wall. But genius thinkers see something different. They see failure as information, not punishment, not humiliation, not the end. Information, data, feedback, clues. That is the difference. Average minds see failure as defeat. Genius minds see failure as instruction. Remember this. Failure is feedback.
Say it again. Failure is feedback. That is the mindset of a genius thinker. Most people react emotionally to failure. They feel embarrassed. They feel discouraged. They feel defeated. And emotion blocks learning. Instead of asking, "What went wrong?" they ask, "Why am I not good enough?" Instead of analyzing mistakes, they attack themselves. That is the wrong direction. Failure is not identity. Failure is information. You failed at something. You are not a failure. That's the key. Every mistake contains a lesson. Every wrong decision contains insight. Every unsuccessful attempt contains knowledge. But only if you look for it. Most people never do. They want to forget failure quickly. They want to move on without reflection. And because they skip reflection, they repeat mistakes. The same problems appear again. The same results continue. Because the lesson was ignored. Genius thinkers do something different. They slow down after failure. They analyze carefully. They ask, "What happened? What did I miss? What will I change next time?" That is intelligent failure. That is productive failure. That's the key. Failure removes illusion. Success can hide weaknesses. Success can hide mistakes. Success can create false confidence. But failure exposes reality. Failure reveals gaps in knowledge. Failure reveals poor habits. Failure reveals weak decisions. Failure reveals truth. And truth is valuable, because truth allows improvement. Remember this. Failure is feedback. Many people think genius means avoiding mistakes. That belief is wrong. Genius thinkers make many mistakes, but they make better mistakes. They learn faster. They adjust faster. They improve faster. Failure does not stop them. Failure guides them. That is the difference. You have a choice. You can fear failure, or you can use failure. You have a choice, always. Think about learning to walk. You fell many times, again and again, but you did not quit. You adjusted. You learned balance. You improved coordination. Failure taught you how to succeed. And adult learning works the same way. Mistakes teach. Errors instruct. Attempts refine skill. Failure builds ability. That's the key. Most people take failure personally. They think failure means they are inadequate. They think failure means they are incapable. They think failure means they should stop. But failure simply means something didn't work. That is all. Not permanent, not final, just information. Genius thinkers separate emotion from analysis. They feel disappointment, but they still analyze. They feel frustration, but they still learn. They feel pressure, but they still improve. Emotion does not stop thinking. That is the discipline of genius thinking. You don't need their permission to fail. You don't need their permission to try again. You don't need their permission to improve. You have a choice. Always. Choose learning over embarrassment. Choose growth over comfort. Choose improvement over pride. Because pride blocks learning. Ego blocks improvement. Defensiveness blocks intelligence. That's the truth. Failure becomes powerful when you study it. After every failure, ask yourself, what worked? What failed? What will I do differently? Simple questions. Powerful results. These questions turn mistakes into knowledge. Knowledge turns into skill. Skill turns into results. That is the process. Most people repeat failure because they repeat behavior. Same habits, same decisions, same thinking, same outcomes. If nothing changes, nothing improves. Genius thinkers change something every time. A new strategy, a new method, a new approach. Small adjustments create big improvements. That's the key. Failure also builds resilience. Each mistake strengthens tolerance. Each challenge increases endurance. Each setback builds mental toughness. Eventually, failure loses its power. It becomes normal. It becomes manageable. It becomes useful. And when failure no longer scares you, you become unstoppable. Because fear stops most people. But fearless learning creates advantage.
Remember this: failure is feedback. Some of the greatest successes begin with repeated failure. Many breakthroughs come after many attempts. Many improvements come after many errors. Persistence transforms failure into success, but persistence requires belief. Belief that improvement is possible. Belief that learning works. Belief that failure has value. That belief creates progress. That's the key. Right now, your past failures contain valuable information: mistakes you made, decisions that went wrong, efforts that did not succeed. Inside each one, there is a lesson. If you extract the lesson, the failure becomes useful. If you ignore the lesson, the failure repeats. You have a choice, always. But learning from failure requires honesty. You must face reality. No excuses, no blame, no denial. Just truth. What happened? Why did it happen? What must change? Honesty creates improvement. Dishonesty creates repetition. That's the key. Failure sharpens thinking. It forces reflection. It forces adjustment. It forces growth. And growth creates intelligence. That is genius thinking. Not perfection, progress. But failure alone does not create genius thinking, because learning requires focus. Without focus, lessons disappear. Without focus, effort scatters. Without focus, improvement slows. Genius thinkers direct their attention carefully. They concentrate deeply. They eliminate distraction. And that is where we go next. Takeaway: if you want to think like a genius, you must turn failure into information. You must analyze mistakes. You must adjust your approach. Remember the rule: failure is feedback. Because in the next chapter, you will learn one of the most powerful abilities of genius thinking: protect your focus relentlessly. Chapter 9. Protect your focus relentlessly. Most people lose their focus every day. Not once, not twice, but constantly. Notifications interrupt them. Messages pull them away. Noise distracts them. Thoughts wander. And then they wonder why progress is slow. Because progress requires focus. Deep focus. Sustained focus. Relentless focus. Genius thinkers understand this truth. Focus creates results. Say it again. Focus creates results. That is the key. Most people believe intelligence is the advantage. It is not. Focus is the advantage. An average mind with strong focus will outperform a brilliant mind without it. Because ideas mean nothing without execution. Plans mean nothing without action. Goals mean nothing without attention. And attention is limited. Every distraction steals it. Every interruption weakens it. Every shift reduces it. You have a choice. You can protect your focus, or you can lose it. You have a choice, always. That's the key. Look at your day. How often do you switch tasks? Start something, stop, check something else, return, leave again. This constant switching destroys momentum. It weakens thinking. It reduces depth. Shallow attention produces shallow results.
But deep attention produces powerful results. Remember this: where attention goes, progress follows. Again, where attention goes, progress follows. Genius thinkers guard their attention carefully. They do not allow random interruptions. They do not chase constant stimulation. They do not surrender their minds to noise. They choose what deserves attention, because attention is life. What you focus on becomes your reality. If you focus on problems, problems grow. If you focus on distractions, distractions multiply. If you focus on improvement, improvement accelerates. That's the key. Distraction feels harmless. Just a few minutes, just one message, just one video, just one interruption. But small distractions accumulate. Minutes become hours. Hours become days. Days become years. And lost focus becomes lost potential. Most people never realize how much attention they waste, but genius thinkers measure their focus. They observe their habits. They remove unnecessary distractions, because success demands concentration. Focus requires discipline, not motivation. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. Some days you will feel inspired. Some days you will feel tired. Focus must continue anyway. You don't need their permission to stay focused. You don't need their permission to ignore distractions. You don't need their permission to protect your time. You have a choice, always. The ability to concentrate deeply is rare because modern life encourages distraction, constant updates, constant entertainment, constant noise. Your mind becomes restless, impatient, easily distracted, and a restless mind cannot think deeply. A restless mind cannot solve complex problems. A restless mind cannot create great results. That is why focus is power. That is why focus is intelligence. That's the key.
Deep focus feels uncomfortable at first. Silence feels strange. Concentration feels difficult. Time feels slow. But discomfort means growth. The ability to stay focused improves with practice, minute by minute, day by day, session by session. Your attention becomes stronger. Your thinking becomes sharper. Your results become better. Remember this: focus creates results. Most people overestimate what they can do while distracted. They think they can multitask. They think they can divide attention. They think they can work and check messages at the same time. But divided attention reduces quality. Divided attention reduces speed. Divided attention reduces accuracy. Multitasking is mostly switching, and switching wastes energy. Genius thinkers do one thing at a time, fully, completely, without distraction. That is the difference. That's the key. Focus creates mastery. Skill improves through repetition. Repetition requires attention. Attention requires discipline. Without focus, practice becomes weak. Learning becomes slow. Improvement becomes limited. But with strong focus, learning accelerates. Understanding deepens. Ability expands. That is genius thinking. Protecting focus means making decisions. Decisions about time. Decisions about environment. Decisions about priorities. Not everything deserves attention. Not everyone deserves immediate response. Not every message is urgent. Not every request matters. Genius thinkers choose carefully, because saying yes to everything destroys focus, and destroyed focus destroys progress. You have a choice, always. Focus also requires mental discipline. Your own thoughts can distract you. Worries appear, memories appear, ideas appear, plans appear, and attention drifts away. When this happens, bring your attention back, again and again and again. Each return strengthens your mind. Each return builds discipline. Each return increases control. That's the key. Strong focus creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. When you work deeply, progress becomes visible. Results appear faster. Improvement becomes obvious. Confidence grows naturally, not forced, not imagined. Real confidence comes from real progress, and real progress requires focus. Remember this: where attention goes, progress follows. Right now, your future depends on what you focus on daily. Small daily focus creates big long-term results. Scattered daily attention creates slow long-term growth. Your habits of attention shape your destiny. That is the truth. And that is why focus must be protected relentlessly. But focus alone is not enough, because even focused effort fails without consistency. You must learn to think and act steadily over time. Genius thinkers do not rely on bursts of effort. They rely on daily discipline, quiet discipline, steady discipline, unbreakable discipline. And that is where we go next. Takeaway: if you want to think like a genius, you must protect your focus. You must eliminate distraction. You must train your attention. Remember the rule: focus creates results. Because in the next chapter, you will learn one of the most powerful habits of genius thinking: build quiet discipline.
Chapter 10. Solve problems step by step. Most people fail to solve problems for one simple reason. They try to solve everything at once. They want instant clarity, instant answers, instant results. But complex problems don't work that way. Big problems overwhelm emotional thinkers. Big problems paralyze impatient minds. And when people feel overwhelmed, they quit. They say the problem is too big, too complicated, too confusing. But genius minds don't panic when problems look large. They do something different. They break problems into pieces. They move slowly, deliberately, logically, one step at a time. That is how clarity is built. That is how confusion disappears. That is how impossible problems become manageable, one step at a time. Most people want the final answer before they even understand the question. They want certainty before effort. They want results before thinking. That is backwards. Genius thinking is structured. It follows a process: step 1, step 2, step 3. Nothing random, nothing rushed. Because rushing creates mistakes, and mistakes create more problems. Slow thinking solves fast problems. Remember that. Slow thinking solves fast problems, one step at a time. Look at any difficult situation in your life. Financial problems, career problems, relationship problems, personal struggles. They feel overwhelming because your brain sees everything at once. Too many variables, too many fears, too many unknowns. Your mind says, this is too much. But that is an illusion. No problem is solved all at once. Every solution is built piece by piece, brick by brick, decision by decision, one step at a time. Imagine trying to climb a mountain. If you stare only at the peak, you will feel exhausted before you begin. The top looks too far away, too difficult, too impossible. But climbers don't focus on the peak. They focus on the next step. Just one more step, then another, then another. Eventually, they reach the top, not because they rushed, but because they continued, one step at a time. That is how genius thinking works. Disorganized thinking creates stress. Organized thinking creates power. When your thoughts are scattered, your decisions become weak. You hesitate, you doubt yourself, you freeze. But when your thoughts are structured, decisions become easier. You know what comes first. You know what comes second. You know what comes next. That creates confidence. Confidence comes from clarity. Clarity comes from structure. One step at a time. That's the key.
Here is the truth most people avoid. Confusion is often self-created. People refuse to slow down. They refuse to analyze. They refuse to write things down. They keep everything inside their heads, and their heads become crowded. Overloaded minds cannot think clearly. Genius minds externalize problems. They write, they plan, they organize, they simplify. Because a problem written down is a problem reduced. A problem structured is a problem weakened. One step at a time. You don't need a perfect plan. You only need the next step. That is where most people get stuck. They say, "I don't know what to do." But that is rarely true. You usually know the next small step. Make the call, send the email, read the book, practice the skill, start the project. Small steps remove uncertainty. Small steps create momentum. Momentum creates progress. Progress creates belief. Belief creates discipline. And discipline builds genius-level thinking. One step at a time. You have a choice. You can keep waiting for clarity, or you can build clarity. Waiting keeps you stuck. Action creates answers. Thinking becomes sharper when it is used, not when it is avoided. You have a choice. Avoid the problem or divide the problem. Avoidance creates fear. Division creates control. One step at a time. Genius thinkers ask simple questions. What is the real problem? What is the first step? What is the smallest action I can take right now? That is how progress begins, not with complexity, but with simplicity. Simple questions create clear answers. Clear answers create strong decisions. Strong decisions create results. One step at a time. That's the key. Many people overestimate difficulty. They imagine problems as giants, but most giants are just piles of small tasks. Break the pile apart, and suddenly the giant disappears. Fear shrinks. Confidence grows. Because now the problem is visible. Now the problem is measurable. Now the problem is solvable. One step at a time. Perfection is the enemy of progress. People wait for the perfect solution, the perfect plan, the perfect moment. And while they wait, nothing changes. Genius thinkers move before certainty. They adjust along the way. They correct mistakes. They refine decisions. Movement creates intelligence. Stillness creates doubt. One step at a time. You don't need perfect thinking. You need consistent thinking. That's the key. When problems feel complicated, simplify them. Remove distractions. Remove unnecessary details. Remove emotional noise. Focus only on what matters. What must be done first. Not everything, just the first thing. One step at a time. Discipline is not doing everything. Discipline is doing the next thing, consistently, without excuses, without delay, without drama. Genius is not dramatic. Genius is methodical. Genius is patient. Genius is structured. One step at a time. You don't need their permission. You don't need approval to start solving your problems. You don't need validation to take action. You don't need someone else to organize your thinking. That responsibility is yours, and that power is yours. You have a choice. Stay overwhelmed or take the first step. You have a choice. Stay confused or create structure. One step at a time. Here is the truth. Every major achievement in history was built step by step. Every invention, every breakthrough, every success story. None of them appeared instantly. They were built through structured thinking, through steady action, through patience, one step at a time. If you remember only one idea from this chapter, remember this. Big problems are illusions created by unfocused thinking. Break the problem down, simplify the task, take the first step, then the next, then the next. One step at a time. That is how genius works. And here is the transition to the next chapter. Solving problems step by step gives you structure, but structure alone is not enough, because genius thinkers also see what others miss. They recognize patterns hidden beneath the surface. They connect ideas that look unrelated. They see signals inside noise. In the next chapter, you will learn how to see patterns others miss, because genius is not just about solving problems. It is about seeing what others cannot see.
Chapter 11. See Patterns Others Miss. Most people see events. Genius minds see patterns. Most people focus on what just happened. Genius thinkers focus on what keeps happening. That difference changes everything. Anyone can react to a single event, but only disciplined thinkers recognize repeated signals. Only calm minds notice hidden connections. Only patient observers understand the bigger picture. And that is why genius looks like intuition, but it isn't intuition. It is observation over time. It is attention to detail. It is the ability to step back and notice what others ignore. Look deeper. That is the habit of genius thinking. Look deeper. Most people live on the surface. They react to headlines. They react to opinions. They react to emotions. They react to the loudest voice in the room. But surface-level thinking creates shallow results. Surface thinkers see randomness everywhere. They say, life is unpredictable. People are confusing. Success is luck. But genius thinkers know something different. Very little is random. Most outcomes follow patterns. Human behavior follows patterns. Success follows patterns. Failure follows patterns. Decision-making follows patterns. Look deeper. That's the key. If you observe long enough, patterns reveal themselves. The person who is always late is not occasionally late. They follow a pattern. The person who always gives up halfway does not fail randomly. They follow a pattern. The person who succeeds repeatedly is not lucky. They follow a pattern. Patterns reveal truth. Excuses hide truth. Genius thinkers look for patterns because patterns cannot lie. Look deeper. You have a choice. You can judge situations emotionally, or you can analyze them logically. Emotional thinkers focus on isolated moments. Logical thinkers track repeated behavior. One mistake means little. 5 identical mistakes mean everything. One success means little. Repeated success means everything. Patterns create prediction. Prediction creates power. Power creates control. Look deeper. Most people are too distracted to see patterns. Their attention jumps constantly. Phone notifications, social media, entertainment, noise, constant noise. A distracted mind cannot detect patterns. Patterns require stillness. Patterns require patience. Patterns require observation. That's why genius thinking requires discipline. Quiet minds see clearly. Restless minds see nothing. Look deeper. That's the key. Genius thinkers ask different questions. Instead of asking, what just happened? They ask, what keeps happening? Instead of asking, why did this fail? They ask, why do similar situations fail? Instead of asking, why am I stuck? They ask, what pattern is keeping me stuck? These questions reveal hidden structures, hidden habits, hidden causes, hidden mistakes. And once you see the pattern, the problem becomes clearer. Look deeper. Your life right now is a collection of patterns. Your income is a pattern. Your habits are a pattern. Your decisions are a pattern. Your relationships are patterns. Your mindset is a pattern. Nothing is accidental. Repeated behavior creates repeated outcomes. That is reality. You have a choice. Repeat the same patterns or change them. You have a choice. Ignore the signals or learn from them. Look deeper. Many people want different results without changing patterns. They want success without changing behavior. They want improvement without changing habits. That never works. New outcomes require new patterns. That's the key. Think about people who stay stuck for years. They say nothing changes, but everything is changing, just not their behavior. They repeat the same actions, the same thinking, the same reactions, and then they expect different outcomes. That is not confusion, that is blindness, because the pattern is obvious, but they refuse to see it. Genius thinkers face patterns honestly, even uncomfortable patterns, especially uncomfortable patterns. Look deeper. Patterns exist everywhere, in business, in learning, in decision-making, in success, in failure. If you study successful people, you see patterns. They focus longer, they complain less, they practice consistently, they think independently, they tolerate discomfort, they act before they feel ready. Those patterns create results. Failure also has patterns: distraction, excuses, impatience, emotional reactions, quitting early, avoiding difficulty. Those patterns create predictable outcomes. Look deeper. That's the key. Seeing patterns requires humility. You must admit you don't know everything. You must admit you have blind spots. You must admit your thinking can improve. Arrogant minds stop learning. Curious minds keep discovering. Genius thinking requires curiosity. It requires questions. It requires observation. It requires honesty. Look deeper. Most people only look once. Genius thinkers look repeatedly. They observe again and again and again, because truth becomes clearer over time. Patterns become stronger over time. Signals become louder over time. But only if you keep watching. Look deeper. You don't need special intelligence to see patterns. You need attention. You need patience. You need discipline. Anyone can develop this ability. Anyone, including you. You have a choice. Stay blind to patterns or train yourself to see them. You have a choice. React randomly or observe consistently. Look deeper. When you start seeing patterns, your thinking changes. You become calmer because you understand causes. You become confident because you see trends. You become strategic because you anticipate outcomes. That is what genius thinking looks like. Not magic, not talent, not luck. Observation, connection, understanding. Look deeper. That's the key. If you remember only one idea from this chapter, remember this: events are temporary. Patterns are permanent. Anyone can see a single moment, but genius thinkers see the repeated structure behind it. So slow down, observe longer, analyze honestly, look deeper. And here is the transition to the next chapter. Seeing patterns gives you insight. It helps you understand the world. But understanding alone is not enough, because genius thinking also requires independence. You must learn to think for yourself, to stand alone when necessary, to trust your reasoning over the crowd. In the next chapter, you will learn how to think independently, because genius thinking is not following. Genius thinking is leading.
Chapter 12. Think independently. Most people do not think. They repeat. They copy. They follow. They absorb opinions from the loudest voices around them and call it thinking. But repeating is not thinking. Agreement is not intelligence. Following the crowd is not wisdom. Genius thinkers understand something most people never realize. Independent thinking is power, and power comes from the ability to stand alone. Not emotionally alone, mentally alone. Because real thinking often separates you from the crowd. That is the price of clarity. That is the price of intelligence. That is the price of genius-level thinking. Think for yourself. That's the habit that changes everything. Think for yourself. Most people want approval more than truth. They want to be accepted. They want to belong. They want to avoid criticism. So they agree, even when something feels wrong, even when logic says otherwise, even when evidence disagrees. They follow anyway, because approval feels safe. But safety creates average thinking, and average thinking creates average lives. Genius thinkers are willing to be uncomfortable. They are willing to disagree. They are willing to stand apart, because truth matters more than approval. Think for yourself. That's the key. You have a choice. Follow opinions or examine them. Believe everything or question everything. Repeat what you hear or verify what you hear. You have a choice. And most people choose the easy path. They outsource their thinking. They let others decide what is true. They let others decide what is possible. They let others define their limits. That is mental weakness. Genius thinkers refuse that path. They take responsibility for their own conclusions. Think for yourself. Independent thinking does not mean rejecting everything. It means examining everything, carefully, logically, honestly. You don't reject ideas because they are popular, and you don't accept ideas because they are popular. Popularity does not equal truth. Crowds are often wrong. History proves that again and again. New ideas always sound strange at first. Different ideas always sound dangerous at first. Independent thinkers are willing to listen, but they decide for themselves. Think for yourself. That's the key. Most people fear being wrong, so they avoid thinking deeply. They prefer simple answers, clear instructions, guaranteed paths. But independent thinking requires uncertainty. It requires exploration. It requires risk. You might be wrong. You will be wrong sometimes. That is normal. That is learning. Genius thinkers are not afraid of mistakes. They are afraid of blind obedience, because blind obedience kills intelligence. Think for yourself. You don't need their permission. You don't need approval to question ideas. You don't need validation to form your own opinions. You don't need agreement to trust your reasoning. Your mind belongs to you. Your decisions belong to you. Your thinking belongs to you. And that responsibility cannot be transferred. You cannot outsource wisdom. You must develop it. Think for yourself. Independent thinkers ask powerful questions. Why is this true? How do we know? What is the evidence? What is missing? What is being ignored? These questions sharpen the mind. They expose weak arguments. They reveal hidden assumptions. They uncover deeper truths. Questions build intelligence. Silence maintains ignorance. Think for yourself. Most people repeat what they hear without understanding it. They quote ideas they never examined. They defend beliefs they never tested. They argue opinions they never questioned. That is not thinking. That is imitation. Genius thinkers understand ideas deeply. They break ideas apart. They test ideas. They compare ideas. They refine ideas. Because true understanding requires effort. Think for yourself. That's the key. Independent thinking requires courage. You will sometimes stand alone. People may disagree. People may criticize. People may misunderstand you.
That is normal. Every original thinker faced resistance. Every innovator faced doubt. Every leader faced opposition. Because new thinking challenges old comfort, and comfort resists change. But genius thinkers remain steady. They remain logical. They remain calm. They trust their reasoning. Think for yourself. Weak minds follow pressure. Strong minds follow evidence. Pressure says, everyone believes this. Evidence says, what are the facts? Pressure says, this is how it's always done. Evidence says, is there a better way? Pressure says, don't question it.
Evidence says, test it. Genius thinkers follow evidence, not pressure. Think for yourself. That's the key. Independent thinking creates confidence. Not loud confidence, not arrogant confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that comes from understanding, the kind that comes from reasoning, the kind that comes from clarity. You trust yourself because you have done the work. You have examined ideas. You have questioned assumptions. You have analyzed evidence. That builds internal strength. That builds mental toughness. That builds genius-level thinking. Think for yourself. Most people wait to be told what to do. They wait for instructions. They wait for direction. They wait for certainty. Independent thinkers move without waiting. They decide. They act. They learn. They adjust. Action strengthens thinking. Thinking strengthens action. Think for yourself. If you want to think like a genius, stop copying the crowd. Stop adopting opinions automatically. Stop fearing disagreement. Stop avoiding questions. Start analyzing. Start observing. Start questioning. Start deciding. You have a choice. Follow the crowd or follow reason. You have a choice. Stay dependent or become independent. Think for yourself. That is the decision. If you remember only one idea from this chapter, remember this. Your mind becomes powerful the moment you stop borrowing other people's thinking. True intelligence begins when imitation ends. So question more, observe more, analyze more, decide for yourself, think for yourself. That's the key. And here is the transition to the next chapter. Independent thinking makes you strong. It protects you from the crowd. But genius thinking also requires patience because deep understanding takes time. Real insight develops slowly. In the next chapter, you will learn how to think slowly and clearly because genius is not rushed. Genius is deliberate. Chapter 13. Think slowly and clearly. Most people rush their thinking. They rush decisions. They rush opinions. They rush conclusions. And then they wonder why their decisions fail. Fast reactions feel productive, but fast reactions are often careless. They come from emotion. They come from pressure. They come from fear of delay. But genius thinking does not rush. Genius thinking slows down because clarity requires time. Understanding requires patience. And strong decisions require careful thought. Slow down to see clearly. That is the discipline of genius. Slow down to see clearly. The world pushes you to think fast. Instant messages, instant news, instant opinions, instant responses. Everyone expects immediate answers, immediate reactions, immediate decisions. But speed is not intelligence. Fast thinking solves simple problems. Slow thinking solves important problems. And the problems that shape your life are not simple. Career decisions are not simple. Financial decisions are not simple. Life decisions are not simple. They require depth. They require reflection. They require patience. Slow down to see clearly. That's the key. Most mistakes happen in moments of hurry. People speak too quickly. They react too quickly. They decide too quickly. They commit too quickly. And once the decision is made, the damage begins. A rushed decision creates long consequences. A patient decision creates lasting results. Genius thinkers understand this. They pause. They reflect. They evaluate. They consider alternatives. They analyze outcomes. They take their time when the decision matters. Slow down to see clearly. You have a choice. You can react immediately, or you can think deliberately. Immediate reactions feel natural, but natural reactions are often emotional reactions. Deliberate thinking feels slower, but deliberate thinking is stronger. You have a choice: speed or clarity, reaction or reasoning, impulse or intelligence. Slow down to see clearly. Slow thinking does not mean hesitation. It means control. Hesitation comes from fear. Slow thinking comes from discipline. Fear freezes you. Discipline guides you. There is a difference. Genius thinkers are not indecisive. They are precise. They take the time needed, not more, not less. Exactly what is required. Slow down to see clearly. That's the key. Clear thinking requires space. Noise destroys clarity. Distractions destroy focus. Constant stimulation weakens attention, and weak attention leads to shallow thinking. Genius thinkers protect their mental space. They limit noise. They reduce distractions. They create quiet moments. Because quiet thinking reveals deeper insight. Quiet thinking connects ideas. Quiet thinking strengthens logic. Quiet thinking builds understanding. Slow down to see clearly. Most people fear silence. They fill every moment with entertainment. Music, videos, scrolling, talking, noise everywhere. But silence strengthens thinking. Silence organizes thoughts. Silence sharpens perception. Silence reveals truth. Genius thinkers value silence, because silence creates clarity. Slow down to see clearly. You don't need their permission to take time to think. You don't need approval to delay a decision. You don't need validation to reflect carefully. Rushed decisions often serve other people's schedules. Careful decisions serve your future. You have a choice: please others with speed, or protect yourself with clarity. Slow down to see clearly. Slow thinking creates confidence. Because you understand your decisions. You see the reasoning. You see the risks. You see the benefits. Nothing feels random. Nothing feels rushed. You trust yourself. Because you know your decisions are deliberate. Confidence grows from understanding. Understanding grows from patience. Slow down to see clearly. Fast thinking creates regret. Slow thinking creates wisdom. Regret comes from careless decisions. Wisdom comes from careful decisions. And wisdom compounds over time. Each careful decision strengthens your judgment. Each thoughtful analysis sharpens your mind. Each patient reflection builds intelligence. That is how genius thinking develops. Not instantly, gradually, consistently. Slow down to see clearly. Most people believe genius is about speed. Fast learners, fast thinkers, fast problem solvers. But genius is often slow. Careful observation, careful reasoning, careful analysis. Because depth requires time. Shallow thinking is fast. Deep thinking is slow. And deep thinking creates powerful results. Slow down
to see clearly. If you want to think like a genius, change your pace. Pause before decisions. Pause before conclusions. Pause before reactions. Give your mind time to work. Give your ideas time to develop. Give your reasoning time to mature. You have a choice. Rush through life or understand it. You have a choice. React quickly or think deeply. Slow down to see clearly. If you remember only one idea from this chapter, remember this. Clear thinking is never rushed. Strong decisions take time. Real understanding develops slowly. So be patient with your thinking. Protect your mental space. Reflect carefully. Analyze honestly. Slow down to see clearly. And here is the transition to the next chapter. Slow thinking creates clarity. It sharpens your reasoning. It strengthens your decisions. But genius thinking also requires discipline, because clear thinking must turn into consistent action. In the next chapter, you will learn how to act with quiet discipline, because thinking alone is not enough. Genius is built through action.
Chapter 14. Act with quiet discipline. Most people talk about improvement. Few people practice it. Most people announce their goals. They share their plans. They explain their intentions. But genius thinkers understand something different. Progress does not come from talking. Progress comes from doing, quietly, consistently, relentlessly, without attention, without applause, without permission. Work in silence. Improve in silence. That is the discipline of genius. Work in silence, improve in silence. Most people want recognition before results. They want to be seen trying. They want to be praised early. They want encouragement for effort alone. But effort without consistency means nothing. Talking about discipline is not discipline. Planning discipline is not discipline. Starting discipline is not discipline. Continuing discipline is discipline. And continuation is rare, because continuation requires strength. It requires patience. It requires discomfort. Work in silence. Improve in silence. That's the key. Quiet discipline means doing what must be done even when no one is watching, especially when no one is watching. Anyone can work when they feel motivated. Anyone can act when they feel excited. Anyone can try when it feels easy. But genius thinkers continue when motivation disappears. They continue when energy drops. They continue when progress feels slow. They continue when results are invisible. That is real discipline. Work in silence, improve in silence. You have a choice. Chase attention or chase improvement. Attention feels good for a moment. Improvement changes your life. Attention fades quickly. Skill lasts forever. You have a choice. Impress people or build yourself. Work in silence, improve in silence. Most people underestimate the power of small, consistent action. They want dramatic change, big transformations, sudden breakthroughs. But genius is built gradually. Daily practice, daily learning, daily improvement. Small progress compounds. Tiny improvements accumulate. Consistency multiplies results. And over time, the difference becomes enormous.
Work in silence. Improve in silence. That's the key. Quiet discipline requires emotional control, because emotions are inconsistent. Some days you feel strong, some days you feel tired. Some days you feel confident, some days you feel uncertain. If you follow emotions, your progress becomes unstable. But discipline ignores emotion. Discipline continues anyway. You have a choice. Follow feelings or follow commitment. Work in silence. Improve in silence. Most people quit because progress feels slow. They expect immediate results, immediate improvement, immediate rewards. When results take time, they lose motivation. But genius thinkers expect slow progress. They understand growth is gradual. They understand improvement is invisible at first. They trust the process, even when results are delayed. Especially when results are delayed. Work in silence. Improve in silence. You don't need their permission to improve. You don't need approval to train your mind. You don't need validation to develop your skills. Your growth is your responsibility. Your discipline is your responsibility. Your progress is your responsibility. Waiting for encouragement wastes time. Waiting for approval creates weakness. You move forward because you decide to move forward. Work in silence. Improve in silence. That's the key. Quiet discipline builds confidence. Not loud confidence, not fake confidence, real confidence. Because you know what you have done. You know the hours you invested. You know the effort you sustained. You know the habits you built. That knowledge creates inner strength. Strength that does not depend on praise. Strength that does not depend on recognition. Strength that comes from work. Work in silence. Improve in silence. Most people overestimate intensity. They think success requires extreme effort, extreme schedules, extreme sacrifices. But extreme effort rarely lasts. Consistency lasts. Steady effort lasts. Sustainable discipline lasts. Genius thinkers choose sustainability. They build habits they can maintain. They create routines they can repeat. They focus on long-term progress, not short-term excitement. Work in silence. Improve in silence. Quiet discipline removes excuses. No drama, no complaints, no announcements, just action. Excuses disappear when action becomes routine. Action becomes automatic. Automatic behavior becomes identity, and identity shapes your future. You become what you repeatedly do. That is reality. Work in silence. Improve in silence. Discipline creates freedom. That sounds strange at first, but it's true. Undisciplined people are controlled by impulse, controlled by distraction, controlled by emotion, controlled by circumstance. Disciplined people control themselves. Self-control creates independence. Independence creates power. Power creates opportunity. Work in silence. Improve in silence. That's the key. Genius thinkers do not seek constant motivation. They build systems. They build routines. They build structure. Because systems reduce resistance. Routines reduce decisions. Structure reduces chaos. When action becomes routine, progress becomes inevitable. You don't need motivation when you have discipline. Work in silence. Improve in silence. If you want to think like a genius, act like one. Stop announcing, stop explaining, stop waiting. Start working, start improving, start continuing. Even when no one notices, even when no one understands, even when no one believes in you. You have a choice. Stay comfortable or become disciplined. You have a choice. Talk about change or create change. Work in silence. Improve in silence. If you remember only one idea from this chapter, remember this. Genius is not loud. Genius is consistent. Real transformation happens quietly, day by day, step by step, habit by habit. Work in silence. Improve in silence. That's the key. And here is the transition to the final chapter. Quiet discipline builds strength. It turns thinking into action. It transforms potential into progress. But genius thinking ultimately leads to one final shift. You stop trying to become different, and you start becoming who you truly are capable of being. In the final chapter, you will learn, become the person who thinks like a genius. Because genius is not a moment, it is an identity.
Genius is not magic. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is how you think. You become a genius the moment you pause before reacting, question before believing, think before deciding. Remember this: genius thinking is calm thinking. Say it again. Genius thinking is calm thinking. If you train your mind to stay calm, if you train your mind to think deeper, if you train your mind every day, you will think differently. And when you think differently, you live differently. Start today. Train your mind. Think like a genius.